Welcome to Breaking Par with Bernard Sheridan, the golf podcast that interviews the best and brightest minds in the golf industry. Now, here's your host, Bernard Sheridan.
Darren, welcome to Breaking Par. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Bernard.
My pleasure. So, first question we always ask all of our guests is, when is the very first time you ever picked up a golf club?
Very first time, I can't say the specific time, but I know I started when I was 5 years old. The course that I grew up at, my father was a member, just the general junior golf program there. So started then, and then just slowly built up my way to playing a little bit more often.
When did you decide that you maybe thought, hey, I could do this as a profession?
Yeah, so it's actually the only job I've ever had. I started working at a golf course when I was in high school, and the PGM programs were starting to get a little bit more popular. And one day I found myself being the first person in the parking lot at about 5:45, waiting for everyone else to get there to open up, and kind of thought to myself, hey, this is I love coming here every day. I had a great pro that I worked for, John Schmall, and kind of said, what, this is. Obviously, I love golf, but the fact that I just love coming and being around the golf course and being around the operation, this is definitely something I'm interested in doing.
Now, is the bulk of what you do is instruction?
It is now. So I started a new job. This will be going into my third season. So prior to that, for about 10 years, I was going through the traditional assistant golf professional route with aspirations to be a head pro at a private club. And always loved teaching, never got to do it as much as I would like to. So this opportunity presented itself 2 years ago, and now it is the bulk of what I do. I still am involved in the operations, still as the head pro, but my responsibilities are starting to dwindle less and less there as my teaching role starts to increase a little bit more.
Which one do you enjoy more?
I enjoy teaching, for sure. No question about it.
Yeah, I think that most professionals do, because it's a one-on-one interaction, and you really get to know people, as opposed to a head professional. You do get to know people as a head professional, of course, but it's not quite the same dynamic.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So what club are you working out of?
Yep. So I work at Holly Ridge Golf Club, which is in Sandwich, Massachusetts, on Cape Cod. And so it's very different than what I've been used to. Again, I came from a private club background, and this is a public par 3. So it's been a great adjustment. Really fun change.
Interesting. Now, are you doing a lot of stuff out on the par 3? Are you doing a lot of on course? I guess you would say playing lessons.
A decent amount, not a ton. It's kind of hard to get out there, as we found being a par 3. There's hard to find gaps out there sometimes.
Sure.
So what we tailor to are the beginner golfers. I taught more beginners my first 2 months than I did in the 10 years prior. So that's been a lot of fun. People that move to the Cape looking to take up golf or looking to play a little bit more full time in their retired years. That's what we cater to, and it's been a blast.
So what do you believe are the biggest challenges that beginners have when they come into the game?
Yeah, the beginners that we get to, I would say, obviously, we all know it helps to start out early. Some of them may have some athletic background, but I would say, as most go, they're definitely not. They don't have a whole lot of athletic ability, if you would. So I think that's a challenge. But I also think the language becomes a tough one. We take things so much for granted when you've been around golf and have played golf for so long that. I had two different gentlemen in a beginner golf course that I taught. After the first week, where we just went over basic clubs and very, very basic stuff, I said, okay, grab your putter and come out onto the putting green. And on 2 different occasions, I had somebody bring a pitching wedge with them, and it said P on it. And I was just kind of thinking, okay, this is where we're at. So. It's great. You work with good players and that's fun. But when you get someone like that, all of a sudden you go, whoa, swing plane. And it becomes very, very interesting of how careful you have to be with your language. So I think the language is a tough one. I know we struggle with that as golf professionals and having a common language. And when you deal with beginners, it really, really becomes an issue.
Now, are the beginner programs that you have, are they mainly a one-on-one type program, or are they in group format?
Yeah, so we do group format. So the one program we have we call Hello Golf, and it's a kind of like a Get Golf Ready, though it's our version of it. So we do 4 weeks, 2-hour increments. And again, it goes from the very, very beginning of this is what a driver is, this is what a putter is. But the big thing with that is getting them on the golf course, and we do that a lot in weeks 2 and 3, or 3 and 4. Just getting them comfortable coming to the golf course. It could even be, hey, do you want to come practice? This is what you would do. You'd walk into the golf shop. This is what you're going to ask for. Again, coming from the private club, everyone knows golf already that joins there.
Sure.
And now we're in a world where, people don't know what to do to get range balls. So, so we do group lessons, and especially for the beginners, I think that's a much easier way to go about it when they're with somebody and they ask a question and they feel, oof, gosh, I don't feel so silly because I was thinking that exact same thing. So with beginners, I think much, much easier to go into the group setting.
Yeah, no, I agree. I know that whenever I used to do beginner clinics, things of that nature, I would always start it. Or if I had beginners come to me and say, hey, I want to take lessons and I'm brand new at the game or whatever, then I would say, hey, I have these different programs that are an introduction that get you to know and understand some of the things that are protocol. Some things that will be expected of you when you're on the golf course, what the equipment is like, what you're going to need and what you're not going to need to start, things of that nature. And it usually, as you were saying, in a group format, I think that for players who are beginners, they're better off getting into something like that that's a group format. Or that's like a clinic. Not only is it less expensive per person, but it's also a good way for them to decide, do I really want to do this? Because sometimes they think they want to do it, and then they start, and then they think it might be a little bit too challenging, so they decide they don't want to do it. So this is a great way to kind of get started and not spend a ton of money right out of the gate, because really when you think about it, to get started, you got to buy clubs, there's a lot involved, and financially it's pretty expensive for most people.
Absolutely.
And then it's also, if it's private lessons, now you're talking about some, more expense thrown on top of that. So if there's ways to do it to make it a little bit more economical, I know that. So in clinics, when you do like brand new beginners, are you providing clubs for those players in the beginning so that they don't have to purchase clubs? So at least they can say, hey, I'm going to dip my toe in here. I want to figure out what the heck's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. We certainly provide clubs, and we also have plenty of club rentals too. So if they're just going to come out and practice on the golf course, or even if they're going to go out and play, we have very inexpensive rental sets, $15 to go out. And our motto at our club is family friendly and affordable. It's the benefit of being a par 3 is it's not as intimidating for a lot of people. You hit one good shot and all of a sudden you're up near the green and putting for birdie. And, how great is that? So we certainly are fortunate in that regard to where we can draw in the beginners and we can keep it affordable. Obviously, having a smaller, shorter golf course, it's not as much maintenance work. So that certainly helps out that case for sure.
What is it now? Is it an 18-hole par 3 or a 9-hole?
18-hole par 3. Yep.
That's nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
And what's the total length?
Total length. So we're just short. We're about, I think we're just under about 3,000 yards total.
Okay, so that's a nice size
shortest
par
hole
3 course.
Yeah, shortest hole is 80 yards, and the longest hole we can stretch to about 220. So it's a good challenge. It's a good some good variety for sure.
Yeah, because beginners, of course, you even have them. Some of them are probably hitting driver off of a couple of those holes.
A lot of the holes, believe it or not, yes. Yeah. A lot of the holes they're hitting drivers. So yep.
Yeah. So and that's a good thing to as beginners to kind of start to understand. now they're starting to get their distances, and they're getting a feel for which clubs go a certain distance, and that's all part of it too.
Absolutely.
So do you use any type of technology with any of these folks, or do you feel that in the beginning that can just make a little bit more confusing?
Yeah, I certainly I like technology, but I agree for a lot of the people that we use, I think it would be daunting and a little bit confusion. So I use the camera. I've got my iPad out there, and again, I know some people are afraid to show students, especially at the beginner level, but I think it's pretty eye-opening for people to see, because for one, a lot of times they're doing a heck of a lot better than they think they are.
Right.
And it's important to show them that, as opposed to, they don't have any sense of feel at that point. So, it's good in that regard, and that you can get them to make changes, because, working with some of the better players, if it feels at all different, it can be a hurdle. But they don't really have sort of a concept of feel. So by showing them pictures as much as possible, I think it really helps for sure. We just recently, this year, we're purchasing a flight scope. So that'll be a new addition. And again, that'll be, I think, more for the teacher. Certainly show it to the students and the beginners. I think but again, more so for club fitting and maybe the better players. We'll have it out there for the beginners, but mainly for distances and stuff like that. But for that level of golfer, I'm a little hesitant to be showing them all the numbers. As again, I think that could be a little bit too daunting to them.
Yeah, I would think so too. I know that even with advanced players, for me,
Yeah.
From beginners to advanced, I'm not showing them numbers a lot.
No.
I'm using the numbers for myself.
Absolutely.
And I'm kind of, keeping an eye on those. And I always kind of think of it as when you go to the doctor and you get blood work and you get all this different stuff, and he might mention numbers to you,
Sure.
but he'll say, hey, here's a good area where you want to be.
Yep.
And then that's about all he says. He doesn't dive into the numbers or try to, because it doesn't really matter. To the patient or to the student. It's more for you to know as an instructor, or for your instructor to know as a player, a little bit more what he wants to do next to get you where he feels you should be. So when in the beginning you mentioned that they have difficulty with feel and things of that nature. So when you use video, do you find that if they do a certain thing and then you show them video and you say, do you feel like this, or do you think that you look like this? Or because you mentioned that sometimes they're surprised at the way that they look, and it might be that they're actually doing better than they thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the way I do it, I know what I'm looking for, and you obviously do too. We know so I want to get the look first, and then when I see them, hit a shot well, or at least get the motion correct, then I'll call them over and say, okay, take a look. And, even people that don't golf, they have a pretty good idea of what looks right and what doesn't. So, now that once I know what I got I know that motion is going to create good shots, even if it isn't right off the bat. And, now they know what the feel is. Now I can obviously say, okay, here's what it looks like. Oh, okay, that actually looks pretty good. Yep, perfect. And now that whole, this feels weird or this feels awkward kind of goes away when they say, okay, well, I at least now can equate this feel with what the picture is.
Right. Now when I know that for me, I use a lot of drills to get players to understand a feeling or emotion. And a lot of those drills that I use don't involve a ball. Do you find that you do that a lot with beginners?
I do. Yeah, certainly. I definitely like drills, but for me, I also want to, I find it's hard to get people to go from just making a good motion. So I'll definitely have them do a lot of drills, swings without a golf ball to get the right feel. But I tend to like to get them to at least equate that with hitting a golf ball pretty quickly as well too. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think though that what I find for most players, I guess beginner and intermediate players, is that they get a little bit too focused on the ball itself.
Yep.
So, and that's all because of everything that they've heard from other people. Also, what they've heard in other sports with keep your eye on the ball and things like that. So I find that in that case, when I take the ball out of the equation, they're more apt to make the correct motion because they're not trying to hit the ball as much. And then once we introduce a ball, we just try to get them to feel the motion as opposed to try to hit the ball type thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So I know that that also I find too with a lot of beginners that they more apt want to hit driver than anything else. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that's where our course is an advantage because, I think a lot of people, we tend to, I want to get them on the golf course, obviously, but with a lot of our people, score really means nothing. They don't want to keep score. And quite frankly, they just want to go out, have fun, get some exercise, and hit a couple solid shots. So obviously, I have no issue hitting driver because with our course, they might have to hit driver. And I think for a beginner golfer, driver's a little bit easier at the length there, but to not have to worry about getting a ball airborne off the ground, having it up on the tee, certainly makes it a little easier. So I'm all for it. Certainly, depending what their goal is, we need to be able to, hit a ball off the fairway, obviously, but, hey, whatever works for them, they get them to try to come out the golf course more often. So
now, when you have them practice or when they practice, is there an area there for them to practice? Is there a range there too?
We do. So we have a great range. We've got about 30 stalls, which is great. And then we have in our area, we've got a grass tee that we teach out of.
Siri is telling us where to practice. So she heard us say that, so she felt that she needed to interject her information to this podcast. So it's nice that since we are on iTunes, that Siri wants to be a guest too. Find that a little amusing. So I'm sorry. So repeat that again to us. You have 30 stalls.
Yeah, we've got about 30 stalls. 250-yard range, which is great. Especially being on Cape Cod where land can be a bit of an issue. I think we've got probably one of the best, if not the best range in all of Cape Cod. So we've got that, which is great. And then we've got a really good putting green as well. Pretty flat, but a very, very large putting green. Not the best for chipping, but again, very, very good for putting. And we've got a sand bunker as well for them to hit. So we've got a lot of people that come out and just use our facility just for practicing. It might belong to other clubs, but so we definitely are able to, provide a very good spot for people to practice, especially beginners.
Well, it's great too that you do have holes that are, you mentioned up to 220 yards. So for players to practice, they can get out there and play, a little practice round or whatever to fine tune their, go to the range and then hop on the par 3.
Absolutely.
And now it's a good way to practice and in real world conditions and not have it take you 4 hours to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is
absolutely.
nice.
Yep.
Yeah. So what about the off season? What are they doing in the off season at your facility?
Yeah, so we stay open year round. This winter's been a little bit colder than normal on Cape Cod, but today, the next 2 days, we're up in the 50s, so we'll have people coming from all over to come play. So we stay open year round, as long as weather's depending, obviously. So we don't have anything indoors, unfortunately. We were trying to get something going this year, but unfortunately, we just don't quite have the space in our restaurant to put anything. But we do have a restaurant in the town that put in a simulator, a sports simulator. So we do have availability there to give lessons and keep people going, which is nice.
Oh, that's real nice. Yeah. So then that way you can go there and use that facility if somebody isn't renting it, right? Or set up a time and meet a student there and do things in the off season. I know that it's difficult I was in Pennsylvania for years, and I had an indoor facility for years just for that fact.
Yep.
And I pretty much did everything out of there year round. So and then I would take them out on the golf course, and then there was a local range that I would take them to also. So that way they could see ball flight, like really ball flight, as opposed to inside. I mean, I know that you can see it on a simulator and it says what it's doing.
Yeah, doesn't have the same effect though on some people. They really want to see exactly what it's doing. So.
Well, I think too, when you're inside, there's a lot of people who are apprehensive about swinging. They feel confined for some reason, and when they're really not. I mean, there's plenty of room for them to swing and do what they have to do. But I think that for some reason it's kind of like a subconscious thing that when you're not outside, you feel like you're going to do some damage to something.
Sure.
So you're really in it. And then there's other players who don't feel that way at all. But I find that there are several who do and are confused with that. Now, do you guys go over separate things too in your clinics? Where you might devote one afternoon just to putting, or just to chipping, or pitching, or separate things, or are you kind of touching base on a lot of these things throughout each clinic?
Yes, we have a lot of different clinic offerings. We do we have one that we do once a month, Never 3-Putt Again. The benefit of being at a short course is it's very easy to us to preach the short game. When you're hitting only one full length shot on every hole, and that's even for the beginner golfer. So, it's easy for us to really preach on how important the short game is when you're not playing a 500-yard hole. So we do a lot of short game stuff. We have a Never 3-Putt Again that's focused just on putting. We have a short game intensive clinic that we do once a month. It's a 3-hour one, which has been very popular. And then in the past, we've done a once-a-week clinic. We would do putting one week, chipping the next, iron, and then driver. So we've switched that up a little bit this year and kind of tied it into our group coaching program, where we're going to have just a short game practice session. And then we have just a full swing practice session. So kind of the same idea, but as opposed to giving just individual tips, we're going to set up different stations for them to work on their putting, chipping, work on their driver or full swing. And then in that regard, we can work with them a little bit individually, or if they have a specific question or looking just for that one or two little quick tips, we can give them in that.
Right. Now, is there any technology that you use to correspond with the students other than just email?
We do email, and I've dived in a little bit with Edify as well for some of the students. Again, I have some that really don't want a lot of pictures, or just don't really want a lot of that stuff. It would be a little bit too confusing and too daunting, so I don't do it with everybody. But for the student that does want to, have a little bit more of a program, and they do want to have a little bit more communication. So we do Edify. I use Huddle a little bit as well for videos, and then obviously just emailing as well.
Do you have like supervised practices too for your groups?
We do. Yeah. So that's where our coaching program is changing a little bit this year. So I mentioned the short game and the full swing. Those are what we're going to have as supervised practice. So the idea would be to obviously schedule time for private lessons, whether they want to do a program of some sort. We're going to have those offerings, but then we want to have the supervised practices where we're going to limit it to 8 people. And again, we're going to have, the goal would be to have somebody come twice a week, once a week for an hour of short game supervised practice, and once a week for an hour of full swing practice. And we're going to have probably 6 to 8 of them a week when we get into the full swing. So there'll be a lot of offerings and a lot of opportunities. And again, the idea, like everybody, one, to make it more affordable. People don't necessarily always need a one-on-one private lesson every week, nor can they really afford it. And the idea, we want to see the student more often. The more often we can be keeping our eyes on them, and also to keep them a little bit more accountable to practicing. And quite frankly, practicing just by yourself can be boring. So to do it with a few other people makes it more fun, and also it keeps them from just taking a driver to the range and pounding away at a large basket of balls.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, golf is a social sport. So,
Absolutely.
so if you can make that social practice too, then people are more apt to want to do it because you're doing it with others. Because there's not too many sports where there's downtime in between what you're doing.
Correct.
And golf is one of those. So I know that the social aspect of golf is something that always drew me to it, because I could be social in between shots and talk about different things and not just talk about golf, but even though that's mostly what we talked about, but talk about other things too, current events or whatever was going on within their lives at that time. And another other thing that I really liked about it too was that you can meet new people.
Absolutely.
So that's always a lot of fun, and that makes it a lot better when it's in a group format. So do you do a lot of junior programs there too also?
We do. Yeah. Again, the benefit of having our golf course being the short course, it makes it very, very appealing for juniors as well. Again, even if the father belongs to a private club, it might be tough to bring them out there. They might not feel as comfortable. Again, bringing them to a par 3 golf course makes all the holes shorter. So one good shot and the junior again is up there, close to the green, having a chance to make a par. And at that age, they don't know what a real par is at a long golf course. It's the fact that, hey, I just made a par,
Right.
which is great. So we do a lot of juniors. We do it this year. We're going to have them on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the afternoons. We have a junior advanced program that we started last year, which was very successful. And then this year, we're going to be diving into PJ Junior League as well. So a lot of options. We do. We're going to have a parent-child event that we're going to do once a month as well too.
Now, with your junior program, have you ever heard of Operation 36?
Absolutely, yeah. So I went to Campbell University, so I know Matt and Ryan really well. So definitely, we've looked into it. Just not sure if it's 100% the right fit for us. Mainly in that we have a lot of different stuff going on. But I've referred a lot of people to them. I think what they're doing is absolutely fantastic. It's a great program for sure.
I've seen that. We've just adapted it at our facility, and it's really made the junior program a lot more successful.
Yeah.
I feel that the kids, because they're starting at a closer yardage, and then moving back as they get better, it keeps them more involved and more excited because they get rewarded. They do well quickly. Which keeps them interested, and we're starting to actually do that with adults too, and beginner adults, and and we're seeing the same results.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, great. Well, look, it was great having you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Just give us your contact information before we leave. So what is the website for the facility?
Yeah, for this facility, it's hollyridgegolfclub.com. And then my personal site is darrenfalkgolf.com.
Awesome, Darren. Well, great. Thanks for being with us. And as we always say in parting, do your best to keep it in the short grass until we meet again.
Will do. Thanks, Bernard.
All right, take care.
You've been listening to Breaking Par with your host, Bernard Sheridan. Follow us on Twitter @BreakingPar and on Facebook @Par Breakers Golf Academy. Until next week, try to keep it on the short grass.